Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Adelene Greene, one of the founders of the Coalition for Dismantling Racism in Kenosha County. Thank you for joining me today.
You are quite welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
When did you come to Kenosha?
Oh, I came to Kenosha in January of 1990. I accepted a job at Human Services, Kenosha County Human Services, as a economic support supervisor initially. And so I've been here. I started my job actually in January of 1990, but I didn't actually move here until October of 1990. I was still kind of filling it out.
Where did you come from?
I came from Northwest Indiana in a city called Hammond, Indiana, right outside Chicago, metropolitan area. And one of the reasons I like Kenosha is that I could get programming from both the Chicago network and the Milwaukee network. So that was important to me to stay connected with Chicago and Northwest Indiana when I moved here.
Okay, and you mentioned that you didn't move here until October after accepting a job and starting in January.
Correct.
Why was that?
Well, this was a completely new community for me, and I didn't know anybody actually when I moved here, but I needed to fill it out and see if this is somewhere I wanted to remain. And one of the things I did is I worked here during the week, and then I commuted. Actually, I commuted on a day-to-day basis from Indiana to Kenosha for 9 months, and there was a lot of wear and tear on my car. And when I finally decided that this is the place I was going to be, then I moved to Kenosha. So I was just kind of filling it out, seeing if this was the right fit for me.
And what was it that made you decide this is the place to be?
The commute, number one. It was wear and tear on my vehicle as well as my body. And I started to meet some people and feel comfortable being here, and that's why I decided to finally settle and move here.
Okay, then when you moved here, did you come with family?
I did. I came with my 3 children. At the time, I was a recent divorcee. And yes, I brought 3 children here. 2 of them remain. One decided that this wasn't the place for her, and so I moved her back to Indiana with my mom. She stayed with my mom to finish out her high school. But yes.
Okay. So this first job as a supervisor, economic support supervisor, how long did you have that position?
I was in that position for 5 years. Prior to coming here in Indiana, I was in a similar position for I think it was about 8 years. And so I saw a job offered here in Kenosha County doing very similar things that I was doing back in Indiana, and it paid more money. And so, that was part of the attraction for responding to the ad. And so as an economic support supervisor, we administered a number of public assistance programs, including what was known as welfare. At that time, it turned into W-2. Food share, child care, child support, and a number of work programs. So I was responsible for the staff that administered those programs.
And what happened after 5 years?
Well, after 5 years, I was called to a meeting with the then Kenosha County Human Services Personnel Director. There was a community meeting of many minority groups that wanted to find out why Kenosha County didn't have more minority employees working in their ranks, and particularly in the management ranks. And so I was called to a meeting with the personnel director, and a number of notables at that time. Mary Lou Mahone, I remember, Brother John Wright was there, the Reverend Olin Arrington Jr., I believe the Urban League director at that time, John Hall, was there, and so they were questioning why there wasn't more diversity in Kenosha County.
And so you were there. Did you speak at this meeting?
I listened more than I spoke. What actually happened is I found out I was summoned to the meeting because I don't remember if I was the only administrative management level person of color at that time, but I assumed that that's the reason I was brought there. And when they questioned the personnel director at that time about why there were no management level people of color in Kenosha County employment, he actually pointed to me and said, well, we do have someone in management, and it's this lady right here. And of course, they did not know who I was. I did not know who they were because I was new to the, even after 5 years, I was new to the community, still feeling my way. And they were surprised to know that there was a management level person working for Kenosha County that they had not met. And so I was the one. I was the one that he pointed out as an example of kind of diversifying the management ranks.
And what was this job that you were put in?
After this meeting, interestingly, the personnel department decided that they would create a position called the Equal Employment Opportunity Coordinator to try to bring about more diversity in the ranks of Kenosha County employment. And so the job was created. I was put in the position on an interim part-time basis. I remained working part-time in human services as an economic support supervisor and part-time as the EEO coordinator for Kenosha County until such time as the position was approved through the county board. So there was a process we had to go through, and I believe I started that interim position in July of 1994 is what my memory tells me. And in the 6 months leading up to the time that the position was actually created, which was January 1995, I went about town to various places, got research done about the position, the need for the position, and presented that to the Kenosha County Board at that time, and they had to vote on it. Okay. And after several presentations, the position was approved for January 1995.
And then what were the responsibilities of that job?
Well, for that job, because it was new to Kenosha County, I had to create, at that time it was an affirmative action plan, what to do in order to diversify Kenosha County, bringing in more people of color, women in non-traditional jobs, and that sort of thing. I also did a lot of interviewing, recruitment, writing ads for positions, and shortly after I got in that position, the Kenosha Detention Center was built, and the goal at that time was to diversify that detention center as much as possible. So I was going out doing a lot of outreach to minority communities, to colleges, to churches, in order to bring people into Kenosha County to even apply for the positions that we had available at the detention center. And that process took approximately, I'm going to say from start to finish, because the detention center was being built at that time, it probably took about a year of intense outreach, recruitment, before the positions were all in place for the detention center.
Okay, so when you accepted this position, what percentage of the jobs in Kenosha County were available or had by minorities?
When I did my initial assessment, before I created the affirmative action plan, the percentage of minorities just across the board were 6% in many different positions. And most of those minority positions I found were located in Brookside Nursing Center that the county was responsible for. there was very little minority representation in other parts of the county. And so the challenge, of course, was to diversify other aspects of Kenosha County. You know, it included human services, for example. It included the courts, the sheriff's department, the health department, the highway department, and there was one other that, you know, I can't recall. I remember there were 6 separate departments at that time within Kenosha County, and so that was my charge, to try to diversify across the board.
And after the detention center was fully operational and the people were hired, what percentage of minorities had jobs in Kenosha County?
What my memory tells me is that the goal at that time was about 30%. We wanted to have about 30% of the hirees be people of color and women in the detention center. And we were close to that goal. I believe when all was said and done, it was about 28% compared to, you know, the initial, when you look across the county, 6% people of color. And so that was quite significant to increase and improve, you know, the minority representation in Kenosha County by, well, for the detention center, 28%. But of course, when you look across all spectrums and you average it out, by the time I left that position, I was in that position for 5 years, the percentage went from 6% to 12% across the county in various positions.
Right. Did positions open up in other departments as well during this 5-year period of time?
Oh, most definitely. We didn't just hire for the
Right.
detention center. That
Right.
was our focus. But yes, we hired for all the other divisions, like I said, human services, health, highways, Brookside, nursing center. So, yeah. I was always in interviews of some sort, you know, recruiting either or interviewing and contacting people who had gotten the positions and had to go through the physical and the other things that they had to be vetted before they actually took the position.
So when you first found out that only 6% of the people holding jobs in Kenosha County by the county was only 6%. Did you hear from anybody why it was so low? Did you find out, like, oh my gosh, did you ask, why are there so few? And did somebody tell you why?
I don't remember if I asked necessarily or I did my own analysis. I'll say that. Because of course you have to do an assessment to determine why things are the way that they are before you can work to improve it. And one of the things through my assessment, you know, I looked at all the records for hires and fires, terminations, retires, and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I discovered is that there were more people of color being terminated than there were being hired. And so when I looked at particularly the retirement rates for people of color, I think there was only, and once again, I'm doing this all from memory, I only saw that there had been, of the terminations, because retirements are considered terminations as well. Of all the terminations, I believe at that time, there was only one, for minority in particular, there was only one who was terminated because they went on to retirement. And the rest had been terminated for either they left voluntarily or they were fired or what have you. And so if you've got more going out than coming in, then that tells you right there that your numbers aren't going to be very significant for minorities. And so I worked to improve the number of people being hired into the county. And over the course of time, I was able to see that there were more retirements for people of color. And that's significant, I think, because you don't want to leave a job without some type of, you know, potential income, especially if you're an older person. You want to leave a job because you have some benefits, some retirement benefits coming to you. And so yeah, I took a hard look at that, and I reported that to my personnel director at the time, and so that's why we worked very hard to bring in more hires. And you know, whether they stayed or whether they didn't stay, that was up to them, but it required some type of, you know, going back to them, figuring out if there were some things that they needed, some additional supports in order to remain on the job. So,
Did Kenosha have a reputation at the time?
I'm sorry,
Did Kenosha have a reputation, Kenosha County a reputation at that time?
That's an interesting question, because as I started my journey as an EEO person for Kenosha County, the first in Kenosha County, I talked to other EEO individuals in Racine County, as well as Waukesha County, as well as Milwaukee County, as well as Beloit, and I'll tell you, the impression that I got from people is that you've got a tough job ahead of you, because the reputation was that Kenosha County was not friendly to minorities. That was the reputation at that time. And so, you know, part of my job was also overcoming that past reputation, letting people know that, you know, Kenosha was a friendly place to work, and we welcomed other people being there, in particular minorities and women. So,
Do you feel like after 5 years in the EEOC job that you were successful in changing that?
I think I made an impression. I honestly do feel like people knew that Kenosha was a friendlier environment. Kenosha County government in particular was a friendlier environment through my various contacts in the churches as well as in community-based organizations. And that's really where I got my start being involved in the community, when I became the EEO coordinator, because I met so many different people. And I became involved in organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, Gateway had an affirmative action program at that time, and United Way. So I really became involved in the community, and that was part of the outreach, also letting these organizations, as well as I said, churches, know that Kenosha County was a place that, you know, they could apply and they could have a possibility of being employed.
Okay, and after 5 years in this position, what happened next?
Well, what happened next was my heart has always been in social services, and a position opened up where I worked previously as an economic support supervisor. The director's position became available, and I decided to apply for the workforce development director's position. And I interviewed, and I was selected for that position, and so I went back to it. It had been renamed. It used to be Human Services, but it was called Workforce Development. But it covered the same areas: food share, child care, W-2, work programs. But I became the director. And in that role, I continued my EEO activity, because even in when I got the position in 2000, it was year 2000, I became the director of Kenosha County Workforce Development. Even when you looked at the employees who worked in workforce development, it was still, I'll say, lacking in terms of the number of minorities that worked in workforce development compared to the clientele. Many of the clientele were people of color, but the individuals who administered those programs were not. And so I continued on my path to try to diversify workforce development beyond, you know, when I left personnel. One of the areas in particular I remember that was lacking is Hispanic-speaking individuals. We had many Hispanic clientele, people who actually spoke Spanish, and they would bring their kids in to interpret for them because our staff did not speak Spanish. And so as Workforce Development Director, I decided that we needed to increase the number of Spanish-speaking people working for workforce development. And some people question that. They say, well, why Spanish? Why not Italian? Why not German? And it was evident that the clientele coming in who needed that interpretation were Spanish-speaking people. But to appease them, I had one of my supervisors actually do an analysis of how many of the various languages were requested at our reception desk. And over the course of time, you know, it proved what we already knew, that 97%, and once again I'm going from memory, 97% of the interpretation that was requested were from Spanish-speaking people. And so that gave me the ammunition to present a case once again to the powers that be, and I don't remember if I had to go to the county board or simply to the personnel director and said, we need some positions designated as Spanish speaking only. We started at the reception desk because that's where they came in, and then over the course of time, some of our economic support positions, the ones who actually determine benefits, we designated some of those positions to be Spanish speaking only. It made quite a difference for those who did not speak English. They were in transition and in English as second language courses. So the diversity covers so many different areas. And that was one of the areas that I addressed as workforce development director, as well as hiring more people of color as economic support personnel.
Did you find, or did you have some kind of evidence that it's more efficient, the whole process works better if there are people of color looking at the people who are coming for benefits or Spanish speaking, as you've already mentioned, rather than I'll say as all white staff looking at potential people coming for benefits? Did you?
You know, for me, I think it's a matter of comfort, and I say that as a person of color myself, working in white environments my entire life, I'll say. Even when I applied for the position in 1990 with Kenosha County, I knew nothing about Kenosha County when I applied for the job. I knew it was close to Milwaukee. And one of the things that I was asked by my friends in Indiana when I decided to take this position is, are there any black people in Wisconsin? Because Wisconsin, just in general, I found out, has this reputation as being very white bread. And I said, well, I don't know, but I know there's black people in Milwaukee. I have cousins in Milwaukee. I don't know. And I say that to say, you know, when I was interviewed by 5 white men. And, you know, as a person of color, it kind of takes you aback, you know. It's like, are these people judging me? Because the environment in Indiana that I worked in was much different. It was very diverse. We had black, white, Hispanic people. In fact, the area that I was responsible for as a supervisor, it was interesting that my area was 1/3 Hispanic, 1/3 black, 1/3 Polish American, basically. And so there was lots of diversity, and that's what I was accustomed to. And so when I came to this community, and most of the people I saw and the interactions I had were with white people, it's just a bit, you know, disconcerting for me. But it creates a certain level of comfort when you see people who look like you. And so for me, in diversifying workforce development, I thought of that experience for me, and I wanted people coming into workforce development because when they come in there, they come in there for a reason. You know, they don't come there to cheat the system, and that's what some people think. There's a need, there's a real need, and they don't need, you know, to be judged based on, you know, them applying for benefits because they're in a particular bad space at this point in time. And sometimes, and I've heard from people who came to workforce development, sometimes it's so-and-so treated me really, really badly. And it's just a matter of just being kind and considerate to anybody who comes there asking for help. in my previous position in Indiana, one of my supervisors used to say, you could have been on that side of the desk. So just consider, how that individual is feeling when they come here. So treat them with kindness, compassion, and I just feel like having a diverse staff, because you have a diverse clientele, makes for the best, operation of whatever you're working in.
And how long did you hold the Workforce Development Director's job?
Well, interestingly, I held that position from 2000, September of 2000, until my retirement at the end of 2017. I'm sorry, the end of 2016. I retired at the end of 2016. And one of the interesting things is that before I got that position, I was told that the reputation of a workforce development director was very short-lived. My two predecessors, I believe one was there for 5 years, the second person was there for 3 years. And so being there for 16 years was an accomplishment all in itself, because you can imagine the demands, for that particular position, the demands from the staff, the demands from the political higher-ups, the demands from the clientele who have complaints about things. They didn't get the right benefit, they didn't, like the way someone treated them, what have you. But I was there for 16 years in that position before I retired.
And you mentioned your first exposure, if I can, with people of color in the community, being pointed out at a meeting that you were the management person of color.
Yes.
How did you come to know them better?
As I stated, I became involved in a number of community organizations and initiatives. So I was asked to be on the Urban League board, and I did that shortly after becoming Workforce Development Director. I became a member of the NAACP shortly after becoming part of becoming Workforce Development Director. I joined United Way, I joined Boys and Girls Club, I forgot Boys and Girls Club. And so I was kind of a county representative in the community. I started as the EO person, and I continued that as Workforce Development Director. So that's how I got to know many of the players that I met at that particular meeting. Mary Lou Mahone was one of the people I met as well. She was director of what at that time was the Lincoln Neighborhood Center, which is now defunct. But yeah, that's how I got to know those folks.
And how did you become involved with Kindness Week?
Kindness Week, I attended Second Baptist Church, and Pastor Olin Arrington Jr., now deceased, was the pastor of that church. And one weekend there was an event held at Carthage College. It was a community event, it was a church event, and we were invited, certain people from various congregations were invited to attend a workshop, a one-day workshop at Carthage College called Dismantling Racism. It was put on by a group out of Milwaukee called Crossroads Ministries. And so as a member of Second Baptist Church, I was one of the people invited to be a representative of Second Baptist Church. There were many other churches there. I remember Bradford Community Church in particular, Unitarian Universalist. There were other organizations there. But anyway, we were invited to this one-day workshop. And from that one-day workshop, we talked a lot about racism, how it presents itself, how it manifests in different ways. And after that workshop, we were very energized and invigorated, and we wanted to continue beyond that workshop and start something in our own community. And so there were about, I'm going to say 20 or so of us that wanted to continue this initiative beyond just the workshop. And you know, many of the names were people that are no longer with us. Mary Lou Mahone was a part of it. Thelma Orr was a part of it. Julian Thomas, who was at Gateway, he was a part of it. Reverend Olin Arrington Jr., myself, Dennis and Kate Weichel, as well as the pastor of the Unitarian Church. And some representatives from KUSD also were a part of this. And so we started meeting on a regular basis, talking about what impact we can make in our community, what we could do to bring the evils of racism to people's attention so that they could be more aware.
Did you form an organization?
Yes, that's what we formed. We formed the Coalition for Dismantling Racism. That's what, as a result of that workshop, we formed the Kenosha Coalition for Dismantling Racism. And from that, we tried to figure out ways that we could make an impact in the community, and that's when we landed on the idea of Kindness Week in Kenosha. And it was actually the brainchild of Reverend Olin Arrington Jr. He had gone to a workshop in Texas and watched this unfold in a Texas community. And he said, we could bring this to Kenosha. We could have a celebration of kindness. And so we talked about it as a group and decided that we were going to launch what we call Kindness Week in January of 1997. And we decided to do it during the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, because it was a good fit. The celebration of someone who was tolerant, who was kind, who was peaceful, but yet made an impact on bringing diverse groups of people together and helping people understand that we all want the same things. We are all more alike than we are different. So that's how Kindness Week started.
Okay, and then what has Kindness Week, from that initial year, that launch, to today, what is Kindness Week comprised of?
Kindness Week is comprised of activities and events that happen for a week based on a particular theme that our group comes up with. So we create a theme, we reach out to various community players and ask if they want to participate. We kick off every Kindness Week with what we call a community unity breakfast, and it's held on a Saturday. It's held generally at one of the Kenosha Unified Schools. So we, over time, in the beginning, we've always given out awards to people who have exhibited kindness, compassion, and caring. Initially, this was geared toward adults. But over the course of time, we thought we would invest our time and effort in kids. And so our Unity Breakfast is held on Saturday. We acknowledge kids who have done something great in their community, in their school, to help others. At that time, I don't believe the Gateway event is taking place anymore, but the Gateway Martin Luther King celebration has always been a part of Kindness Week. It was always held on the date of Martin Luther King's actual birthday celebration. We've involved churches and had interfaith celebrations. We've involved the colleges and had various events, also celebrating people who have exhibited some type of special kindness or tolerance. And in the past, in the distant past, we worked with Tremper High School, who had a really great program, and they created either plays or exhibits or something that reinforced the theme for the week. But we try to concentrate on young people during Kindness Week and help them understand the importance of helping their fellow student, their fellow human being, and the importance of being kind to others.
Okay. Now, the coalition launched Kindness Week.
Correct.
What did the coalition do outside of Kindness Week? I mean, it's still going, and Kindness Week is still going, but the coalition does other things outside of the Kindness Week, correct?
Correct. Yes. Kindness Week is one of our signature events, but we also do what we call courageous conversations. The Kindness Week, I'll just say the Kindness Week is kind of our touchy-feely event, you know, to bring community together and celebrate and that sort of thing. But also our focus is on, you know, anti-racism, exposing it, identifying it, raising people's awareness so that they can at least be cognizant that racism still exists in this world. So we have what we call courageous conversations, and we pick a topic and we invite either presenters, or we have panel discussions, and we invite people to come and hear what those presenters have to say about racism and what we can all do to at least minimize it. I don't know that we can ever eradicate racism, but we want people to be aware that everybody's world and everybody's experience is not the same. You know, some of us, and particularly people of color, have a different experience in the world, and so we just want to raise awareness. I don't know when this is going to air, but one of the courageous conversations we had in October of 2024 was on the subject of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because as you know, the current administration is not favorable to that. And so we brought in a speaker in October to talk about the intent of DEI and why it's important that we continue to diversify and include people of all races, you know, ethnicities, so that was a courageous conversation we had just last year. We're planning, in fact, this week, in fact, tomorrow, which is June 4th, I don't know when this will air, but June 4th, we're bringing in a speaker to talk about the erasure of history, and particularly history of the people of color. And this one is specific to the military ranks. We have partnered with Pritzker Museum, who has an exhibit right now called The Color of Freedom. And we decided to have a presentation and invite people to listen to someone who is a retired military general, an African-American woman, to talk about why it's important to have diversity in all aspects of our existence. So we just try to, you know, raise awareness, because people often don't know that these things have happened. And one of the reactions we get from people who participate in our courageous conversations that I didn't know. And so, you know, now you know, you've been educated, you've been made aware, and so, you know, you have to decide what you want to do to make the world better.
So you mentioned you invite people. This is an open invitation.
Invitation.
Anyone in the community to
Anyone
attend
can attend.
Participate, listen, and do
Right.
what they can get out of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how long have these courageous conversations been going on?
Oh, they've been going on since almost the beginning of Kindness Week. We used to do them annually, and we've decided to do them more frequently, just depending on what's going on in the world or in our community. We've had them as frequently as every other month, or we sometimes we don't have a set schedule when we have these courageous conversations, but we usually try to get at least 3 courageous conversations in during the course of a year. So yes, our next one is in June, and we've got 2 more in the works for later on this year. Like I said, it depends on current events, and we pick our topics based on what's going on. And I do want to say one of the other things that we do as a coalition is, because we don't have our courageous conversations every single month, we have an agreement, I'll say, with the Kenosha News, where we do guest commentaries every single month, and they're focused on, you know, anti-racism or raising awareness about racism. The last one that was printed in the paper, I'm trying to think of the topic, there was one that was printed just last week last Sunday. Oh, it was on the difference in, or the need for everybody to learn how to swim. May was like swimming appreciation month, I think that's what it's called. And so one of our coalition members, who is a swimming coach, he did an article on the disparities in swimming for people of color, and particularly black people and white people, and that it's very necessary to learn how to swim. It's necessary for your safety. And he presented the history of why, you know, some groups don't know how to swim as well as others. And so it's that sort of thing, just raising awareness, giving a little education and background on what's transpired.
And how many people attend these courageous conversations?
It just depends on the topic, the weather, the day, but we've had, I'm going to say, as few as 50 for some, and as many as 160 for others. And so we never know how many people are going to show up, but generally speaking, I say between 75 and 100 people show up for our courageous conversations.
Okay, now you've been having these conversations for 25 years. Have you seen any kind of indication that things are improving, changing, being better?
In the individuals that I speak to, I think there's been improvement and appreciation, you know, for the education and the awareness. It's hard to measure, I believe, what impact you have made, but hopefully we're getting to more than just the choir. That is the challenge with this. You know, you have some people who are on board with you and they believe it, and you know, they're gung-ho about making a difference. It's those that perhaps I don't speak to on a regular basis that I don't know what the impact is, but we're hoping we're at least, you know, getting people to think a little deeper about things, and maybe, you know, things aren't as rosy as they're being presented. So it's hard to measure, but I like to think that between Kindness Week, working with the kids and, you know, encouraging them to be kind, caring, and tolerant, and then the courageous conversations, which are geared toward adults, that we're making an impact in this community. I like to think that.
Thank you for joining me today.
All right, thank you.